All like that. Oh, shit balls. Funny. Tonight on the BBC News, we're going to be talking about stuff.
We're going to be talking about the world's latest.
We're going to be talking about very important things because we are authorities in all things unauthorised.
And to start, we're going to be talking about the difference between the hustler, the depressed hustler, and the empowered wizard.
All right.
Let's unwrap that, because there's some meaning behind it.
Let's unpack it.
Let's talk a little bit about
the depressed hustler.
the depressed hustler and then
So
the empowered
originating
wizard.
thought, where was the originating thought for that idea, William?
Okay, so first of all, this is Craig the Wizard. Craig the Wizard has has taught me a lot in life as I transform all the ideas. Most of them are from Craig. Craig runs Soul Space Australia in the Gold Coast. It's basically
About the soul.
it's about the soul, and it's a big community. Everyone gathers every single week to show up to it. It's about connection, authenticity. What else is it about?
It's about transcending limitations of everyday life by tapping into their higher aspects of self, so they get more access to creativity and higher thinking, loftier visions of their life rather than being stuck in the mundane of mediocrity.
And just a little thing, look at the lens, because that's their eyeballs.
Ah,
Okay, that's not their eyeballs, that's their eyeballs. The lens.
oh, true. That's a good one. I'm looking at my fucking self in the picture. And you look gorgeous, Craig. Good on you. I love you fucking lots.
This is what happens at Soul Space. Everyone's like, I love me. I am sexy.
I'm like, oh my God, I just feel like just so shanty right now.
Imagine every week you just get together and we're like, we're sexy motherfuckers.
Oh my God, you can't get any more downward facing dog shanty and avocado on toast than soft Sunday. Delete that. It's not.
We're keeping that in.
It's a wonderful, wonderful community of good people. It's a gathering here on the Gold Coast. You're welcome to join us. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah.
Going back to our originating thought of the hustler mentality.
The hustler, yeah.
The depressed hustler. Where did that originating thought for you come from, William?
So I've been on a journey, and I've been on the journey of having different mentors and different influences growing up. So the reason I say that is because it was, what, 1 or 2 years ago? Like, when did we meet?
Yeah, no, 2.5 years ago, something like that. I think when we first
Really?
met, when I first arrived on the Golden Coast. Or maybe 2 years, you may be right.
Yeah, it was somewhere that time frame. But I was very in like a hustle mode. I was going hard, every day, morning to night. And I was just extremely disciplined in every way.
And you were slaying it.
Yeah. Like I was really on it. But it was coming from like a very low energy state. Not necessarily like actual energy, like when you wake up and you can go for a run or something, but like the frequency was low. Like it was coming from pain, anger, and I'm gonna prove them wrong, and it had this story attached to it. And to be fair, we all got a story like that. Most of us do. And if you don't, you're blessed. But I mean, you can turn that story into a blessing as well if you do have it. So I had that story of, I got to prove everyone, and, getting out of my hometown and family dramas and all of this stuff, that I had a lot of basically resentment in me, And I was working from that place. So, and all of my early mentors, it was all discipline, hard work, and suck it up. And it was this big, it was just heavy. It was really heavy, And I think there's always a time and place for hard work. Don't get me wrong. But I was living in it all the time. And I found it quite, over time, you don't really enjoy life to the same degree. I would wake up and I would dread the day, basically. I gotta do it again. And I would do it. I had such good discipline. I would do it every time. I gotta do it again. And I would just not have any excitement for life.
But that happens, isn't it, with people like yourself who have a really good work discipline.
Yeah.
You can drive yourself until you hit the wall. And that's one of those things when you're operating from that high intensity of the overstimulated adrenal glands, you've got the adrenaline pumping through, you've got the cortisol.
6 shots of coffee.
Exactly. But you've got, when the cortisol, it's the stress hormones. It's the things that creates that anxiety and the tension. And while structural tension is really important, because where you are to where you want to be, there is a gap in between. You want to close that gap. So there has to be some form of tension for you to catapult yourself and move you forward. But when it's at the breaking point is when it's really damaging. So I think that's what you're saying, Will, is that you could keep that race up for so long until you hit the wall.
And I don't think I ever hit a breaking point, you know? Like, I've got really, really good ability to switch a perspective. So what but that was also part of the resistance to like getting out of that phase, because I was so good at it. I was like, well, yeah, but then I'd reframe it to keep doing it because I thought it was just like the best way. So it actually had to get to a point where I was like, wait, is this actually just how I want to live my life?
Yeah.
You know, it was more of like, no, it's not whether this is, because I've seen, like, whether it's business goals or fitness goals, there are people who are happy who accomplish it. There are people who are sad who accomplish it. Like, I'm saying those terms on a generic basis, but I've seen it done in multiple ways, and I realize I'm like, oh, well, it can just be done. It doesn't matter, like, the how is subject to change. And I was like, okay, if that's the case, do I want to be doing this depressing morning to night by myself, not creating any kind of similarity to the life that I actually want to live around people and, you know, actually experiencing it? I'm like, I'm 26, you know? I've postponed it. I've made the excuse for all these years. And for what? I'm like there's gotta be more, you know? So I think that's the convo I had to kind of have, you know, which is how do you want to do this? Because there is no end game in regards to working. There's always going to be more that you can do.
You can. It's one of those things, isn't it, with that, as you're saying, discipline, putting the time and effort into something. And often we do. We spend time doing things right, but actually doing the wrong things.
Yeah.
You know, we try to get everything right. We're trying to make that we're doing the very, very best of what we're doing. But really, we're doing the wrong things. It's like climbing the ladder of success and recognizing that we've put the ladder up against the wrong wall.
So how does someone know what's the right and the wrong thing?
That is a very good question, isn't it? Well, it is.
Because that's the hard part, right? And that's what I found hard, which was like,
yeah.
I know I've got the drive, I know I can commit, but what am I going to commit to?
It's one of those things, it's like where great mentors come in, right? They've been down that path. It's like with yourself, with personal training. I know when I first started just doing bench press, I was doing bench press wrong for years.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize how it was damaging my shoulders. It's one of those things wearing over time, whereas a slight adjustment with the elbows can make a huge difference. But you don't, you can just push on and you keep loading heavier weights on because you overcompensate. But is it actually doing damage? How long can you keep that going for? Until once again you get shoulder damage. So, is it the pain? What was one of those things for you then? How did you know that? Wait a minute. I know I've got a really great work ethic. I've got incredible drive. I can just keep moving with long energy for long periods of time. What was it for you that came up going, well, wait a minute, something just doesn't feel right here. It just doesn't feel like I'm on the right path anymore.
I think I saw what I wanted to accomplish get done in a different way that suited the lifestyle that I wanted. And I was like, why am I doing it like this? If it can be done like that, when this will not allow me to do it like that, like live that life.
So give an example of that. What was one of those things that came up for you?
Well, let's say with business, right? Because there's multiple ways you can structure an online business. You can structure it in a way to where you're glued to the screen the whole day, or you can structure it in a way to where you can give your influence differently.
Yes.
You know, so I just saw that there's different ways to give influence, there's different ways to give value, and I was like, well, how do I actually want to do it to a point where it gives me life? Like, what gives me life when I do it? Like, I would just keep doing it.
Yeah.
Like, because what started happening is I was doing things a certain way within the business to where I think I just started dreading some parts of it. And I know, like, you don't necessarily have to do all parts within a business, and you can eventually delegate some things that you're not. But there was so many moving parts to make certain ends meet within it, and I was like, this isn't. I don't know. Part of me's probably still figuring it out to a degree.
Yeah. And those are really good questions sometimes, isn't it? To ask yourself if it's not feeling quite right. How long do you keep that up for?
And honestly, I would say as well, positive affirmation from, obviously once I met you, I met a lot of other people as well. So getting into your whole circle, just seeing, I guess I was getting confirmation of other talents of mine, you know, other skill sets and what I can bring to the table. And I was like, should I be doing this? If this is like what I actually, you know what I'm saying, am good at, and I would say even probably more passionate about. So I think getting perspective from people ahead, like you said, it just made me ask questions. You know, if I remove any sense of urgency of what I have to do to feel a particular way about myself, which is also talking about my, you know, attaching self-worth to certain things in a business. Once I actually did work to realize where all that came from and I got rid of that problem, I was like, okay, well, actually, how do I want this to look now? Yeah. You know, because my self-esteem isn't attached to this anymore. Like, I came to that realization through Soul Space and you and all of that. I was like, well, my self-esteem isn't tied to my money. Yeah. Or it's not tied to this or tied to that. So I was like, if that's the case, then how do I want to create that impact or whatever it is? Like, now how do I want to do it? With no rush of like, I have to do it now so I can feel this way about myself. That was a big one.
And that's a big part of growth, isn't it? You know, evolving. When you have a different awareness, you move through different life stages of life and you have a consciousness shift, meaning that you couldn't see it before, but yet you grow, you expand, your awareness expands, and you can then look back on your life and recognize, well, actually the things I've been doing that used to work, that used to feel good, don't feel as good anymore, and don't actually work for me.
That's what it is. Because I haven't given a clear answer because I'm like trying to connect dots, but as I developed, I started noticing misalignments. Yeah. I was like, oh, that's strange. Like, I don't care about this thing anymore. Yeah. Why is that? Oh, because I was only doing that because I wanted to feel this way about myself from that thing. But I actually just don't care about that thing. Yes. I want to do this thing. Yeah. You know, so once I developed myself, I actually realized why I was doing certain things in the first place. It was to fulfill something within myself. But once I actually realized that, I noticed the misalignment, and I was like, wait, something needs to change.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, those healthy ways of utilizing those challenges of our youth, those painful moments of our youth, and channeling it into a way where it's constructive and not damaging to one's self along the way, isn't it? You know, you want to yield the results from it. Use it as rocket fuel. And initially when you launch something, some of those things, like anger's a fucking great tool, right? Anger's a great thing to get, I'm really fucked off here. It'll push you off its sofa and get you started. And you can run with that. It's like, you know, jet fuel that will get a rocket out of the Earth's gravitational pull into that sort of rarefied air of space. And you need that big combustion right at the beginning to get something moving. But how long can you keep that up for?
Literally, like, I remember I've had thoughts to myself at certain points in my journey, and I was like, how long am I going to keep repeating this narrative? Yeah. How long, like, does it have to keep being like this? Which was just completely my perception of it.
Yeah, because earlier on, it was something new. Okay, I'm going to get into this
Yeah.
online business. It was something that you were really passionate about. You loved going to the gym. You loved working out. You wanted to share your knowledge and wisdom with other people. So that
Yeah.
was actually all great, isn't it?
Yeah.
But then you realize when you get stuck in it, there's actually a fucking lot of work. And you're stuck behind a computer doing a lot of things that are not necessarily in your passion of helping people and just and training or being creative with the other things. A lot of the nuts and bolts that you have to do, the day in, day out, that's morning till night, 14, 15, 16 hours sat in front of a computer doing the things that are not necessarily your passion or your genius, but you have to do them to get the business to a certain point of growth. But then it comes to that point when that life, because you're quite a creative person. You play the piano, you're a highly accomplished pianist, and you learnt that from an early age. And once again, it was one of those great ways that you utilized pain and challenge and suffering and utilize those emotions by putting it into the keyboards and expressing yourself through music. Genius, you've got really creative aspects, really creative flow that you can put into your business. Where the challenge is when you're not spending enough time in the creativity mode, when you're in the doing, when you're in the trenches, the morning till night, that will suck the life out of a creative person.
Well, that's it, right? Like, I like coaching. I like doing that stuff.
Yeah.
It's not that I don't like it, but I was neglecting other sides of me because I just thought it wasn't relevant. And then I was like, wait a second, like this is still part of me, you know, like pay attention to that.
Yeah.
And what I started finding was I was getting reassurance from your group, you and your group of like, yo, like where was this, you know? And I was like, oh, should I like pay attention to this? And then it started opening my mind up again. Because when I finished year 12 out of high school, I was playing music and I was getting into fitness. I was like, which one? It has to be one or the other, you know, because I'm a very all-in kind of guy. So I decided fitness because it aligned with the values more. I preferred the level of impact. I preferred the actual effects it made on me in my lifestyle as well. So I went that way. But I thought, like, what I did was like, I just put, let's say, music aside. I was like, no, that's done now. You know, move on. So, but it's just interesting now seeing how things kind of come back, or just like, wait, that doesn't have to go. It can be part of what you do if you want. And what I realized is, like, if you really want to do some big things, you got to be unique, and the way to be unique is actually be you.
Exactly, and play to your strengths and your genius. This is why I love collaboration. I think collaboration is one of the highest forms of conscious ways of doing business. If you can find a partner that is really great at doing the nuts and bolts and loves just sitting there doing it from morning till night, the numbers or whatever that is, which for me would do my head in. Like, for me to sit down and just do numbers or things, it's just not me, because I'm much more expressive. I'm much more, I need the creative aspects. I like aspects of it, but I don't want to be doing it morning till night. That's why when you can collaborate and you can bring people in with their geniuses and build teams, that's where things can thrive, right? People in the right people in the right places doing the right thing at the right time. Fucking boom. And then it comes down to, are you doing the right thing? And that, one of those ways that you can sort of say that is coming back to your question earlier. Well, how do you know? And a big part of that is, how do you feel? You know, when you first started, you're in your passion, you're in your heart. You actually really cared and you were excited. It was a lot from this space, you know, it was like bringing your heart into something. When that starts to get sucked out, the life is getting sucked out because you're doing the things that are not necessarily the things that you enjoy doing the most, we just get into the head, and it becomes very structured, very numbers, very non-human aspect of things. And then we miss the reason why we're doing this in the first place. And then it starts to show up in the way we show up. So where you show up on videos, it starts to show up. The way you show up
100%.
is that, because you
can't hide it.
You can't hide it, because the person on the end of this camera can feel it when you're speaking from your heart, when you really are there and wanting this person to transform their lives and make a massive change. These people feel that.
You know, you can actually see with these videos that I post, when I am really in my message, not saying that I ever lie or anything, but when I'm really in my message, I'm really feeling it, I see a higher view count associated with the video.
Totally.
Literally. Like, people resonate. It gets pushed in the algorithm. Like I'm like, that's because it was like I was so in that message. The way it like spoke to the person, they're like, oh shit, like
Yeah.
they felt it.
Well, people can connect with what you're going through, even when you're processing something and thinking something like I'm thinking now on camera. People on the other end can go through that journey with you. I saw something you posted a few weeks ago, and it was really great. It was after we did some filming and the audio didn't work, and you went back home and you did a phone about something about processing your emotions and your anger and turning that anger into something really constructive. And it was you were telling everyone on the other side what to do. There was a moment in there that I thought was some gold in it, when you could have just gone, you know what, I've had a really fucking shitty experience and I'm really angry right now. I've just had, and go through the experience and let everyone, me, because I was on the other side of that camera watching, is going through the process of like, oh, well, tell me what's happened, what's gone on, and why is this relevant, rather than just go and do this. The backstory was what was really important and what was really interesting. I was hanging going, okay, Will's going to tell me exactly what's going on from that moment. And then, but you didn't on that moment. And I thought it was a great opportunity to. And then, as you just rightly said, well, you have done that on the other videos.
Yeah.
People are all in, and it's the lights and the viewers through the roof. Doing things that you're passionate about. Many of the mystics and the sages throughout the years have said that this premise of follow your bliss, some would say, or follow your joy, follow your highest excitement. Why do they say that? It's because there's a great ball of energy that runs alongside that, isn't it? There's a big ball of energy behind you pushing along because you've got a vision, so that vision is pulling you and you're feeling that you're being drawn forward into something great. But it's the energy that attracts life. And I always think about that energy is like a light. If you turned on the porch light at a house, you'll get a few moths coming around that little light. If you have a movie set light, and those if you've ever seen them in Hollywood, they're just massive, the size of this, huge lights that they'll put out onto the street to light a whole street up when they're filming a movie. When those go out in Hollywood, people come out from miles around. They come around and they will start to come and look at what's happening. Light attracts life. It's energy, it's a frequency, it's a vibration. The brighter the light, the more life it attracts. So when you're in your heart, when you're in your passion, when you're in your joy, you've got the highest amount of energy. You've got this big searchlight, this big light that will attract life. That's why business works when you're in your passion. You're fueled with this energy. When it starts to dissipate, because your enthusiasm or your passion or your energy because you're tired or things are just not working out, or it's Groundhog Day over and over and over again, the energy, the light is diminished. It becomes small, so it tends to not attract the same amount of life.
Yeah, and a thought that I had on that, which is, if you don't actually, let's say, enjoy it to a degree, or there's no energy or heart behind it, you're not going to push it as far as someone else who would have anyways. And you can push what you actually have heart behind so much further if you truly step into it all the way.
So true. So coming off the back of that, what could you do? Say if you just invested a lot of money or you haven't got the options to basically just walk away from something. How do you do that? You have to find the reason, right? So one, you've got to find a big why. So what is that why? For some people, I know our friends, they're passionate about their business because they want to retire their parents, right? So they want to make sure that their parents are freehold and they become completely retired. So their passion and their drive, they've got a really big why. So then the how and the what's usually fall from that. Luckily for our friends, the what is already there. The how is already there. So it's more of the same, right? So it's the same groundhog. They can do that for a long period of time, and as long as that train track can keep running, they can do it, milk it, bank the money, retire their parents. So the passion, the excitement, the joy for getting up in the morning, even though it's probably quite repetitive, is that they've got the this big enough driving force, a big why of we're retiring our parents. So they're focusing on the joy of what will that feel like? What will that experience be like when they get to go, okay, mum and dad, mortgage is paid for, just go on holiday for the rest of your life. Here's a few cruise ships to go and play on for the rest.
That's a very good point, because it's sometimes you don't actually even need to love the thing you're doing, but you love the why behind it that drives you to push it.
Yeah.
So when people are like, oh, well, I have to be passionate about this business. Well, what if you're passionate about the why behind this business?
Exactly, yeah. And where people do, they forget the why. So I spoke to a salesperson the other day, and she said, oh, look, I'm really struggling, things are not working out. And I said, look, really simply, are you using your force or your power? And she said, I'm using my force. And I said, the difference between force is, are you pushing, are you forcing something? Or are you using your power, which is more magnetic? What's magnetic is the heart. In this universe where we have thoughts that go out, that send and receive, it's like a Wi-Fi signal, you're sending out, the heart is receptive. This is what receives the signal to come back. So I asked her, and I said, how do you connect into that heart again? You've got to remember why you got into sales in the first place. So I said to her, why did you get into sales in the first place? Start to think about that. What is it about your business or your product or your service that is changing people's lives? What is it about the way you're showing up on a daily basis that is making a significant difference in someone's life? What is the greatest amount of impact that you're making through what you're doing now? If you can remember that, you've got your why.
And the thing is, it's so easy to lose perspective in the day-to-day. You could have such a great point, or such a, like I have coaching calls with clients and I tell them, I'm like, watch this video again, put it somewhere where it's incredibly easily available for you, because you will forget. Right now you're having a eureka moment, but you're gonna go back to your life, and as much as this was life-changing and you feel it right now, you're gonna get a call from your employer who's gonna tell you to work on their dream. You're gonna get the family asking you to do something. You're gonna get pulled again, and you're gonna forget. Because not that you didn't resonate, you just got caught up in all these other things pulling you in 20 different directions. So what I would love for you to maybe elaborate on is, how can someone keep their why in perspective on a frequent enough basis not to forget?
Really important. So you have to keep holding it into its space for a while. So you have to make that really, really important to be focusing on. You have to utilize things like affirmations. You've got to be putting it in your mind all the time. And the reason why that is because it's a neurological and it's a neurological process. Because when we have big long story, so I'm going to summarize it. Bear with me one moment, caller. I'm going to summarize a big long fucking thing like this, put it in this. When you embark on something new, you've got the excitement initially, right? It's an excitement. It's like you're running off into a direction. But what you don't realize is, in the brain, in a neurological sense, you've actually got a rubber band wrapped around your chest that's tied to a tree back here. You don't notice it for a little while until it starts to kick in. Then you're starting to run towards the goal and the vision. That rubber band is starting to get tighter and tighter and tighter until you get to the certain point where it's reached its extreme, and unless you've got enough focus on the why, you've built up enough strength and you've created neural connections strong enough to hold that new vision, that new why in place, that snapback will just pull you right back. That the tension on that rubber band will just pull you back, and you will be right at the beginning again, which is then leaves us feeling disappointed.
Because change is hard.
Change is hard. Change is hard because we have hard wiring in our brain. So it's like a superhighway. So inside the brain, if you can imagine these neural connections, every time you do something, creates a neural connection. It's very light and small, like a little garden path initially. The more you trod that path, it becomes a footpath, it becomes a road, it becomes a superhighway the more you do it. Initially, when you start something, you've only got a little path that you've built. You haven't built a really strong neurological pathway. You've only got a tiny little garden path until you keep doing that by repetition over time. Similarly, if any of you drive Will, when you remember when you first drove the car, you had to use your mind consciously thinking about changing gears, indicator, looking in the rearview mirror. And then it comes to the point, the body has already remembered it. It's already got neural pathways already connected that when you get into the car, the brain and the body goes, I know how to do this.
So it's basically just repetition and habituation, and it's harder in the beginning because you have a lot more habituation around the old behaviors, the old narrative, and the old version of you that you've attached your identity to. So the moment that you're trying to make a change and shift and transform into another person, you are developing this little neuro pathway against all of this. So it feels hard because you got all this rewiring to do. But don't let that stop you, because what's the alternative is that you just keep living this out. But that is why it feels harder compared to someone where it just looks easy because they've done the repetitions. So a good way to go about that is just celebrating the micro wins.
Absolutely.
Celebrate the micro wins.
Recognizing that the brain is designed to change, but you just have to change it. It's called neuroplasticity. It is the ability for us to change those pathways and do other things. And by habit, over a period of time, as Will was saying, you will naturally start to reinforce those habits, the better habits. So you have to change, you have to make a change. So coming back to why is it really difficult when you first start something? One, you've got to have that why, but it's not about creating a why like a mission statement and sticking it on the wall and never reading it again. It is about you've got to anchor that why in your body, in your feeling, your state. It's got to be so habitual that every morning when your eyelids open, you're onto that why, your passion. You've engaged this body and all of your senses on that one thing. Then that's how that becomes a superhighway, and you just naturally get onto the freeway and you're off.
That's when you wake up and you're like, let's fucking go.
Yeah.
Like you are leaping out of bed. You're not getting up slowly, and you're like, I've got shit to do, and you want to do it. Yeah. It's part of you. I love what you said. It's like embedded in your body.
Yeah.
Not just logically and, yeah, well, technically this is my why. No, it's like, do you feel that shit? Do you live that shit?
That's it. You've got to feel it.
Yeah.
And it is one of those things throughout all of our life. We pick up these habits. We learn from our doctors, our teachers, our priests, our friends, our family, and we have these ingrained beliefs that we carry on. It's our identity, our habits, our behaviors. They get pretty much locked in. For anyone who's hit that mid-30s, that you have a series of locked-in behaviors. Your identity, you're just pretty much conscious only 5% of the time. 95% of your day is on autopilot. So you're going through the rest of your day just doing the same things over and over and over again. So change does require your focus, because usually you'd only be present and focused 5% of the time. The rest of the time it's autopilot. So making change, you have to spend a lot of time initially driving new patterns into that neurological system. Like you did, Will, when you were at the piano. I remember you telling me when you were at school, on your school desk, while you were doing your lessons, you were also playing an imaginary keyboard on your school desk. What were you doing? You were hardwiring neurological pathways. You were teaching your body what to do. You were teaching the brain where to go in the path. And then at some point, you don't need to think about that.
Yeah, I'd sleep and then I'd go to the piano and I'd feel it. And I'd do the same with training as well. Exactly. I think about the day before, leading up, how it's going to feel doing the bench press, how it's going to feel doing the squats. And I go in and I just repeat it, because my brain doesn't know what the difference is. It's just knowing that those cues to follow physically.
That's
how
a
to
really
position itself.
What we're saying is that the brain can't differentiate between fact or fiction. So this is where visualization really kicks in and works so well. You can imagine something, like you could probably try it right now, sitting where you are, is if you think about a lemon and you slice that lemon into 4 quarters. Now imagine yourself picking up one of those pieces of lemon and start to put it into your mouth and bite into that lemon right now. Like I can imagine that, and I've got that
salivation.
I've got that reaction as if I'm.
When I think of sour candies, I salivate.
You could do the same thing.
Not that I like it. I don't like it, but I literally start salivating by the thought of it.
You know.
Yeah.
So that's what Will was just saying, is that there was no lemon here. We were just imagining all this sour candies. But the body was having a response as if that was actually happening. And we know it in ways of our own arousal. We don't have to have anyone around, but we can think of something and things happen in our physiology just through our imagination. So tapping into that imaginarium through visualization is a superpower. So you're quite right. How do you approach things?
And think about it, like if you're someone in a small town and you got no representation of it around you in your surroundings, the brain works wonder. I used to do that all the time. You know, when I was in Sydney, I was always imagining. You know, I was just dreaming half the time. You know, what it was, the life I wanted to live would be. So I was already painting a picture. So it wasn't extremely foreign when I was there. It was like, no, I already knew. I knew. It was just, I already preceded this already.
That's why struggle is great. Coming from hardship initially, it gets you to dream of something bigger. When you're in, your life is just pretty good. You're brought up in a good family with a thing. You don't really have many of those sort of drivers. You know? The pain isn't really pushing you. You probably haven't found your big vision. So vision isn't pulling you. So you're stuck in the in-between land. And you can often get stuck in mediocrity. Whereas when you're in a place being brought up in the Bronx somewhere in America or some of those areas, you've got a real reason to make a change. So pain actually pushes you.
Some of the most complacent people I know are the ones who had everything great.
Oh, totally.
Like literally, I remember one time I was with a friend of mine and we were working out, and I was talking about I just invested into this course and this mentorship, and the standard of the work ethic was so strong, and I was like, I'm knuckling down these next blah blah, and it's just like, do you really have to work so hard? That's not sustainable. And I was like, bro, like that was such a eye-opener for me. I forgot what the point even was, but yeah, basically that was the same guy that now I compare the difference. I'm like, wow, look what the difference was in the past based on the pain that drove me and the complacency that didn't have any work ethic because there was no challenge.
Because it's a comfort zone.
Yeah, comfort zone. Yeah. So if you got pain, it's your blessing. That's why they say pain is your power, because that's your fuel to kickstart. And then until, like you say, the vision pulls. Beautiful thing. So, I mean, either way you're winning. If you don't have pain, great. Use the great life that you have to continue to create more of it. Or maybe you actually have to go and challenge yourself a bit more and experience it.
Or you may have a great vision. You might just go, I actually want to build something great to help other people. So the vision's pulling you along. If you haven't got that, you're somewhere stuck in the middle ground.
Yeah. And if you got pain, you can use it for your blessing. This is about to die. Before we go, there's a couple seconds. Tell them your experience with Bob Proctor.
Oh, Bob, the late great.